Important to know that velocity and speed are not the same thing. So speed is a scalar quantity. So scalar quantities only have a magnitude or a size, and scalar quantities like speed don't have a direction. Now, in contrast, velocity describes an object's direction as well as its speed. So the velocity is a vector quantity because the magnitude, because it has magnitude and direction. So speed just has magnitude or size, so basically how fast it is, whereas velocity has how fast it is and also the direction in which it's going. So remember, speed is not the same as velocity. Speed is an example of a scalar quantity because you do not need to state its direction, and velocity describes the object's direction as well as its speed as a vector. Now, vector quantities have magnitude and direction, whereas scalar quantities like speed just have a magnitude. So the equation for average speed is the average speed measured in meters per second. That would be equal to the distance travelled in meters divided by the time taken in seconds. The equation can be used to calculate distance travelled, but assumes that the speed is constant. So objects don't always have a constant speed, obviously, but we can use this if we assume that it does to work out how far something's travelled. So some typical speeds for you. If you're walking, you're going to be walking about 1.4 meters per second. If you're running, it's going to be 3.3 meters per second. A bus in the centre of town might be 10 meters per second. A car on the motorway will be 31 meters per second. The speed of the wind might be 6 meters per second. And the speed of sound is 330 meters per second. So assuming that speed is constant throughout its motion, speed of an object is the total distance of the object travels divided by the total time it takes. So speed is distance divided by time. Which of the following statements is true? Speed contains a direction, or velocity contains a direction? Now remember, velocity contains the direction and a magnitude. Speed just contains a magnitude. Speed is a scalar quantity, not a vector quantity. And velocity is a vector quantity, not a scalar quantity. Remember, vector quantities have magnitude and direction. So the equation for average speed, if we remember, is average speed equals distance divided by time. Now, if a car is travelling at a velocity of plus 10 meters per second, and it suddenly turns around and continues at the same speed, what is its new velocity? Now remember, velocity has a direction and a magnitude. In this case, the direction is it's going in the positive direction, and its magnitude is 10 meters per second. If it turns around and goes the same speed backwards, it's still going to have a magnitude of 10 meters per second, but it's going to be negative 10 meters per second, because it's going to be the opposite direction to what it was before. So if a car travels 60 miles in 1 hour, it will have travelled an average of 60 miles per hour. If Usain Bolt travels 100 meters in 10 seconds, his average speed will be 10 meters per second. We can work that out by taking the distance travelled, 100 meters, divided by the time, 10 seconds. 100 divided by 10 will give you 10 meters per second. If two people stand back to back and walk away from each other at the same speed, but in opposite directions, their speeds are the same, but one will have a positive velocity and the other one will have a negative velocity. So let's say they both walk at 1.4 meters per second in opposite directions. One will have they'll both have speed of 1.4 meters per second, but one will have velocity positive 1.4 meters per second, one will have velocity negative 1.4 meters per second. So the cyclist travels at a constant speed of 5 meters per second for 1 minute before speeding up to 10 meters per second for 10 seconds. how far does the cyclist travel overall? So you've got to break the problem up a little bit. So for the first minute, the cyclist travels for 60 seconds at 5 meters per second. Now to work out the distance he travels or she travels, we do distance, and that's equal to speed times time. So the speed is 5 meters per second, the time is 60 seconds. So overall, 5 times 60 is 300 meters. That's the distance traveled. And then for the last 10 seconds, the cyclist will travel at a speed of 10 meters per second. So then the speed is 10 meters per second times by the time, 10 seconds, will give you 100 meters. So the total distance traveled in the first minute, they traveled 300 meters. In the last 10 seconds, they traveled 100 meters. So in total, they traveled 400 meters by adding them together. Speed is a scalar quantity, if you remember, meaning that it only has magnitude and not a direction.